this is a secret basement that generated underneath the end portal. And here's a woodland mansion that didn't fully generate, causing illegal blocks like this chest. And these are the rarest structures that you can find in Minecraft. Starting from rare to how is that still possible? If we were to load up this seed in 1.16 and then go to these coordinates, then you'll find you're not just in a village, but a desert pyramid village. Because here, one of the village houses generated perfectly inside of the desert temple, even having its roof perfectly match up at the front of the base. The villager's whole house is functional too. You'll even see them stepping outside. And what cracks me up is that because of the staircase nature of the temple, you'll actually find some of the villagers parkouring up to the top of the roof too. So while it might be a bit more difficult to go down there and explore the treasure for yourself, I will mention that there is an enchanted golden apple down there. Just make sure not to set off the TNT trap down there. It doesn't hurt them, but it's probably not good for the property value. But an even rarer village for us to see is this abandoned one. Since while abandoned villages are already rare, only having a 2% chance of generating instead of a normal village, what we've got here is an even rarer chance of having a ruined portal generate on the same structure grid as this village house, which makes it pretty easy to see why it's abandoned. Honestly, I'm amazed the village house doesn't burn down. A ruined portal generating in the wrong spot has been known to burn down a woodland mansion, but I guess if worst comes to worst, they do have some cauldrons on hand. While we're familiar with ruined portals, this is what SirCat dubs the no portal structure, which is where the game generates everything that would normally be in a ruined portal structure, the netherrack, the lava, but none of the obsidian portal frame. I mean, these structures are supposed to introduce the player to know how they're supposed to build a nether portal. If there's nothing here, then it's just a weird patch of netherrack. It's like the world generation of acne. And the fact that this is right next to a jungle temple that we're seeing over here makes this whole thing a lot weirder, but also a lot rarer. This next structure is so small that you might just miss it, but that's what's so special about it. Since while mineshafts normally generate about 1 in every 250 chunks, what we see here is not the normal 3-block wide corridor, but instead one that's completely overridden, just giving us a 1x1 mine shaft. At this point, it just looks like someone strip mining with X-ray on. And if it weren't for the chest minecart placed on a rail perfectly, I would think as much. And it's that specific combination of having air blocks right in the middle to give us this perfectly aligned minecart chest that makes this all so much rarer than it would have been normally. Taking one of the 50+ corridors that normally generated a mine shaft, making it into really something special. But even with that in mind, it's still not the rarest mine shaft on this list, since what we see here is a particular pattern that can happen when you get a repeating seed in Minecraft, which as wild as they are to see, are something that does happen more than once. But the way that we get something this visually interesting to happen is that it has to happen over the looping chunk pattern. Otherwise, it would just be a normal mine shaft in this rather weird seed. And while normal behavior for these seeds is normally having the caves and ravines start to generate infinitely, because this happened in a Badlands biome, we got the above ground mine shafts to give this extra long structure. This igloo generated perfectly inside of the plains biome. So what happened? Well, usually the way that an igloo generates is that it checks for the biome at the center point. So for it to visually look like there's plains around the outside, it all comes down to this little patch of the biome right here that's snowy. That's apparently all the biome that we need to get this whole huge structure, because it didn't just generate an igloo. And with a basement to boot, this actually gets even rarer to find, since there's only about a 50% chance of that happening for every igloo. And with a village off to the side here as well, we could even cure these villagers down here and reintroduce them back to society. Or, just eat the golden apple. Villager outposts can generate in a number of different locations, but this is the first one I've ever seen that's beachfront. Since while outposts are meant to generate about every 10 to 11 chunks in land biomes, what we see here is one that overlapped with a deep ocean biome instead, giving an ocean monument directly underneath our pillager outpost. And it's not just the floor of the outpost that this broke, since the iron golems that were meant to be stuck in the cages are actually just floating inside of the water. And because of how weird this is, we're also seeing a couple of illegal block placements as well, such as this floating small grass and the flowers over here. And while I want to break the cage and free anyone as much as the next guy, having to do so with mining fatigue, that's more than I'm willing to pay. When you first spawn in, this seed doesn't seem all that special, but what makes it such a terrible spawn is what makes it such a rare seed. Since if we were to dig our way out of that cobblestone, you'll find that we found ourselves spawning within the structure of a woodland mansion. And while the woodland mansion doesn't have any special loot for us to speak of, don't worry, we could follow this village path, and then if we fall down into the ravine, we have an exposed mine shaft as well, which really makes it feel like the game's trying to make up for how bad of a hand it dealt you at first. An extended mansion like this is a really cool sight, but it's nothing super rare. At least that's true if you're playing on amplified seeds. But the fact that we got this mansion that generates all the way up to Y level 278 on completely vanilla default terrain, that's what makes it special. I mean, I like a room with a view, but I don't think I'd be placing down millions of cobblestone just to have the foundation for the same house. And what's even stranger about the seed is that you spawn on this mansion, meaning if you were to equip yourself with the iron ore that you find beside you, you might be able to vacate this place for a pretty sweet starting house. Finding a half bed in a village, that's rare. But finding that half bed because it happened to generate inside of an ancient city, that takes it to a different level. And the only way for this to happen is that the village couldn't find an actual surface to generate up on top. So when it keeps diving deeper and deeper, you eventually find one where the house ended up inside of this terrible real estate. What's funny to me is that half bed is still functional. You'll see the villagers still go to it at night, but given their terrible choice in location, they probably probably would have been better off using that wolf for noise deafening. I don't like their odds against the warden, especially considering it takes 8 iron golems just to stand a chance against one of these guys. When you go to the end on this seed, you'll find that the exit portal generated all the way down at Y level 18, instead of the usual range of roughly Y level 64. But that's still not the strangest part about this end, since if we look off to the side, you can see that some of these end pillars actually generated off into the void. Usually the way that the end main island generates is using a noise function that centers around Y level 60 to 65, and then the exit portal generates at the highest block that it can find at 0, 0. So for this to happen, half of the island had to go and sag down into the abyss where it doesn't even generate because it's too deep to the void. So if we treat this as Gaussian distribution, then that means that this chance of happening is 1 in 500 million seeds, or roughly 0.0000002% chance of happening. Would have definitely saved Mog Swamp some time if you didn't have to blow up the whole rest of the biome. This jungle temple generated in a jungle so small that it doesn't even look like it's in the jungle, but rather just on the stony beach. Really, the most jungle part about this is the jungle temple itself. And then to add on to that, we have a desert village generated over here to the side of it in the Badlands biome as well, making this whole seed even rarer to find. And what's funny to me is that this actually looks like the jungle biome's trying to camouflage itself more than it does in the actual jungle. It's closer functionally to a desert pyramid at this stage, which I guess based on proximity, it is. In the past, we've shown off how to get a tall witch hut on this seed, where this witch hut generates partially off of a cliff so that all of its wooden support beams get even longer. But what's strange here is that we have this formation found by NNLK, where the witch hut actually placed its legs at the bottom of the deep ocean, giving us a 70 block tall witch hut. And as they confirm, this is completely without shattered terrain. This is normal world generation. And because the hut platforms normally generate at a fixed Y level between 64 and 68, that to get something this tall, it has to go even below Y level 0. At the bottom of the witch hut, you can even find some exposed deep slate diamond ore. That's how low we have to get, turning the swamp, which is one of the flattest biomes in the game, into something that has an insane vertical drop, and into something that only has the odds of about 1 in 2 billion seeds. Even though we have jungle villagers, we can't exactly get jungle villages. And this abandoned village might hint at the reason why. Because as Gamer says in their original post, this only has a 1 in 1.2 billion chance of happening. And one of the reasons this gets even rarer is that this has to happen with a regular village as opposed to a desert village. And so for a plains biome to generate this close to a warm, humid, rare biome like the jungle, that alone would be enough. And then make it one of the rarest versions of the village that we can find, and this triple conjunction of events gets exceptionally rare. You want to make end cities even more stressful? Try this seed. Since while you might find this end city ship luckily when you go to the outer end first from the gateway, the issue is that the chunk boundary cut off the ship's generation. And even rarer still is that the block that it cut off is exactly the one where the item frame for the elytra would be. But because the game thinks that the item frame that this generated on top of is actually 1 block deeper, technically giving us an invalid placement for the item frame, what'll happen is that the elytra pops out of the item frame, and then we have 5 minutes on the timer to go and get our elytra before it disappears forever. It's not my favorite stakes, but at least it's better than going and spending hours trying to find one of these things. So if you're looking for elytras, I'd much rather go with this double-decker end city ship. What we see here are 2 ships that aren't colliding in any kind of way, they're just passing by in the night. And thankfully that means we have double the amount of elytra that we can get here. Both ships perfectly have their item frames intact. And the way this happens is that we have 2 end cities that generated on opposite ends of these islands, each one setting off their ship into aerial combat and letting us do some aerial combat of our own. As of 1.21.4, our woodland mansions can also generate inside of Pale Gardens along with the Dark Oak Forest. And while that alone has to be miserable for the pillagers, considering that they're not a fan of the creaking, I can't imagine this world generation's any more comfortable. And for this woodland mansion to not only generate underground inside of a cave, but to also have lava dumping out on top of it is particularly bad. And considering the normal odds make it to about 1 woodland mansion per 276,000 chunks, then the chances for that one place for it to generate to be generating on the surface 40 blocks below down here in the cliff, it's all pretty lucky, even if they don't feel like it. The last place you'd expect to find ocean ruins are probably on the surface, and so finding one inside of the woodland mansion is even stranger. What cracks me up about this is that it actually fits pretty well inside of the hallway, but it doesn't even bring any water with it when it generates. Even the buried treasure that we're supposed to find here really isn't all that covered. But if you look at the game's code, ocean ruins have no exclusion zone with woodland mansions. But really, why should it? I mean, the biomes aren't supposed to generate this close to each other anyway. The drowned and the illagers don't even seem to mind each other. Though these drowned that got stuck in the walls of the woodland mansion, they're probably not so comfortable. Here, this is how we get a new zombie, the suffocated. You ever wonder how a dungeon could get even more evil? Well, just fly next door. Since the way that these 2 dungeons generated back to back, we got a real sight of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde right here in our world generation. Both are spider spawners too. It really does feel like they're evil twins. And while none of the skulk veins naturally generated on this one to the left side, because of the skulk catalyst that generates on this side, if we tear down these walls, we could easily generate some of that skulk vein by killing off the spiders. Which I guess proves that saying true. If you got 2 wolves inside of you, which one wins? Whichever one you feed. If you found an exposed trial chamber inside of the ocean, that would already cause you to take pause. But when the reason you find that trial chamber is because it intersects with an ocean monument, then the whole thing gets even stranger. And it's not just a simple wall where these two intersect, since we can even find strange blocks peeking in on both sides. Like these ice blocks that generated inside of the ocean monument that were meant to be from trial spawners, or all of this new flooding that we have now inside of our copper chamber. Normally the trial chambers that we're used to seeing generate in between Y levels -40 to -20, and the ocean monuments that we find are in the sea levels of the deep ocean. So for this intersection to even happen, the way that the structures have to overlap is because there's vertically the monument's base reaching down to the trial chamber ceiling, meaning in one terrible concoction you can get infested, slowed down, and mining fatigue all at the same time. Maybe pack a milk bucket. Since next we have this rare site where an ancient city generated in the exact same spot as a stronghold. And even cooler still is that the ancient city portal frame tried to generate inside of the regular portal frame in the stronghold, giving us an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. Because reinforced deep slate isn't supposed to break easy, but our end portal frames aren't supposed to break at all, giving us this strange yet functional portal. I mean, at least we got some kind of portal in the ancient city. It's just not the one you're seeing in YouTube thumbnails. You might normally walk past a geode and think nothing of it, but you'll want to stop and look at this one, since on the inside our fossil managed to generate right on the inside of this amethyst geode. And fortunately for us, it brought along a whole bunch of deep slate diamond ore, which if we were to peel back the layers, you could find 22 of these just within a short area. But before you break all of them with silk touch, pay special attention to this one, where one of the amethyst clusters is actually budding off of the deep slate diamond ore. Okay, now you can break it. Ocean Monument already destroyed a pillager outpost, but what about a woodland mansion? Since instead of generating within the root forest on the coastline, this instead happened to overlap with the deep ocean biome in such a way where it actually gets cut off even above the water level. And because of exactly where this cuts off in the building, we also get a lot of block placements that aren't allowed to be happening normally in the game, and you'll see as much if you block update them. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the rarest of these blocks. Right here, we have a double half chest, which is to say a double chest that was supposed to generate, but only generated one half of it. Now, it's not a single chest. You can look inside of the chest from this angle, and we can even place down another chest next to it, which I think makes this for one of the rarest chests that you could possibly find in the game. Just not super usable. Why did this pillager outpost end up in an ancient city? Well, there's only a certain few biomes that can actually generate a pillager outpost in the first place. And considering ancient cities like to generate underneath things with high erosion, that would mean we need a more mountainous biome like a meadow. And then when the game went to go try to find the surface, it could only place down here at the ancient city level. But it's strange to me that we're seeing the outpost with no prisoners in a place with a mob called the Warden. If you were to boot up this seed, you'll find shockingly close to spawn that there's a desert pyramid, and going down inside of the loot chamber, it opens up directly inside of a trial chamber as well, trading out one TNT trap for a whole bunch of them. Thankfully the breeze's wind charges can't trigger these pressure plates, and normally we'd expect to see a vertical gap between a pyramid basement and a trial chamber of about 80 to 90 blocks. So for the desert temple to generate this far down into the world, that apparently set us up for the luck we need for this to generate just right. At least the trial chamber didn't overwrite these two chests. And I love this screenshot from their original post. It looks more like an optical illusion than anything that actually generated in the game, but here you go. It's all real. Wild. When you first boot up this seed, you might think the rare structure is this amethyst geode that completely overrode a monster dungeon. And while the odds of that are low, our even rarer structure happens a whole lot lower. There's a lot of reasons a ship can wreck, but I don't think I've ever seen one crash all the way down at bedrock level. And this seed by M33 Galaxy shows the lowest possible shipwreck at Y equals -63. Luckily, the chests are intact, but you'll need to break bedrock with a glitch to go get them. And really, the best way to get a view at this thing is to go into spectator mode and fly into the bedrock. It looks more like a bad mine shaft than it does anything that was meant to be at sea. And yet, as crazy low as those chests are, they still don't make the record for the lowest buried treasure ever found, since that would have to go to this seed that we see here, which on Bedrock Edition generates a buried treasure chest right underneath bedrock level. And as you can see here, the reason that this happens is because of a sinkhole. So the game knows that it's supposed to place the buried treasure, but it actually goes and breaks the bedrock instead to place it down. And if you can't open a chest with stone on top, I doubt bedrock's any better. So maybe get your heart of the sea on one of the other 5 billion seeds you'd have to search just to find this. We've seen the end portal go through a lot and still never break. And as it turns out, the only thing capable of breaking the end portal is another portal. Since as soon as we go and find this stronghold, we're revealed that it actually had one of the end portal frames broken by a ruined portal generating above it. Even if we fill up the Eyes of Ender, we can't get this thing to work. But if you have the obsidian on hand, you could actually go and repair the giant nether portal on top of this thing. The nether spawn isn't great, but at least it works. In a Minecraft village, you'd expect to find the librarian's house, the blacksmith, and in this one, the stronghold. Now, as you'd expect, something like this happening is extremely rare. The game normally has checks and balances that prevent strongholds from generating above sea level. Normally, any portion that's above Y level 64 is replaced with air. So the way that we get exposed strongholds like we're seeing here actually have to come from something like ravines or erosion. Though in this case, I'm guessing it has something to do with the ocean monument that also cut into this. There's really no shortage of structures here. And what's interesting to me is that strongholds were originally planned by Jeb to be exposed to the air like this. It looks more like a proof of concept than bad world generation. Or the fact that this villager's house connects directly to the portal room and that whole thing is underneath a shipwreck. It's a shame Sipover only gave this a 3 out of 10. The way that nether fortresses and bastions generate is that they're never supposed to overlap, with each one being set up in an exclusion zone to make them generate in different quadrants. Usually if you find a bastion in one direction, you're not going to find a fortress there for a while. But what we have here in this seed is a nether fortress completely overlapping with a bastion. And for that to happen, the exclusion check needs to fail at the grid boundary, and both of the structures would need to be near their maximum size to even allow this to happen. And that fortunately sets us up to see the wither skeletons fighting all the piglins that exist within the structure, allowing us to try to time the perfect heist and go and sneak in amidst all the chaos. We've seen the stronghold generate inside of a village, but what about a village generated inside of a stronghold? And here, the world generation messed up so much that there are village houses that are trapped inside of the stone. But luckily, some parts of the village did generate successfully, and it's amazing to see. Like this spruced up part of the villager's house jutting into the stronghold only to be interrupted by a trial chamber next to it all, or this other scene where a village well generated exactly inside of the end portal frames, causing the portal to still be functional, but the iron golem stuck inside in the lava and burns to death. Normally when you find a blacksmith chest, you're looking to find 1 or 2 diamonds, which makes this 1.16 seed where they found 21 in one chest exceptionally rare. Whenever you open up a blacksmith chest, it rolls 1 to 5 item slots that are going to happen from a loot table. And of those item slots, diamonds have a 16% chance of yielding per slot. So to get this lucky and have it be so close to the world spawn, just 100 blocks away, that's pretty special. Because of the strange way that Bedrock can generate its end portals, only there were we able to get this seed where 2 end portals generated not only next to each other, but inside of a trial chamber of all places. And I guess we used up all our luck trying to get the 2 end portals, because they do not generate with a lot of Eyes of Ender. Really, they don't generate with a lot that they're supposed to have. Instead, the water from the trial chamber floods underneath instead of the classic lava that we're familiar with. Just ask the Iron Golem for confirmation. If you find this igloo, make sure to go down the basement, or rather go down the ladder, but you gotta stop halfway, since partway down from this igloo extends all the way inside of the end portal frame, perfectly lining up our stone bricks to where it even feels like it's part of the stronghold. Oh, and it's a good thing you didn't go all the way down to the basement, since because of where this thing generated, it even broke through the bedrock, giving us complete void access. But that also means our villager fell into the void with it. On the bright side, you can keep the golden apple to yourself. For this seed to even happen, we had to hit the world generation lottery. So let's go through the jackpot here. Since it's not just a village house that's perfectly inside of this trial chamber, though that's cool enough. But then we go further down the stack to find a stronghold inside of the ancient city. That means we got 4 independent structures at 1 set of coordinates. So if you're willing to build a mega elevator, you can combine all of these to have one of the craziest server tours possible in the game. Thanks to how Java 1.17.1 generated, the jigsaw pieces that made up our villages were weighted a bit differently than how they are today, and so we could see abnormal amounts of buildings start to stack up in one place, which thankfully set up this, where we got 11 blacksmiths just in one village. Now, anytime that a village gets a building, it has about a 2.3% chance that it's going to be one of the blacksmiths. So not only does the village have to go above the average of having 8 buildings for this to happen, but we also have to come up with that 2.3% chance 11 different times for this to work. And thankfully, blacksmiths are one of the few structures with loot actually worth finding this in the first place. Finding 2 dungeons next to each other is already rare. Finding those spawners aligned in a straight row, that's rarer. And finding 6 dungeon mob spawners in a perfect straight line like this, you literally cannot find better than this. In the video by Chris, the developer who worked through this program, they said that there's simply not enough chunks that exist within Minecraft's 60 million by 60 million world border that would allow us to find 7 in a row. And to show just how insane this is, even when they found the seed, you'll still have to travel 20 million blocks to even go and use this spawner. But if you do, you'd maybe be rewarded with the coolest mob farm ever made. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?